Alright, for the next part of the tutorial series, we're going to be doing some local color. We need to make some decisions at this point as to what color I will be using and sort of just the underlying texture. This isn't talking about essentially what the local color is the color, the flat color, as if you had no lights applied to it, essentially a very neutral tone. And then after the fact, we're going to add a multiply layer which will do the shadows. We might do some other fancy things with layers and stuff to create some highlights, but essentially all we're doing now is we're creating the flat texture that sort of, it doesn't have any light information on it. And we need to do that to all the different masked areas. So what I've got is the character design that Sydney created for this particular frog, which I used as reference for this painting, to do the drawing and to hopefully finish the painting with this tutorial. So as you can see, this is going to maximize. So as you can see, there is a darker sort of almost red, orange red, and then there's a more middle of the road orange, and then sort of a highlight yellow. So the highlight yellow is essentially where the light's coming in. If I switch to a brush, I'll show you what I mean. Go black. So the light's coming in from this direction here, hitting this area here, hitting the tops of the legs as well, in the back there, and slightly through there, hitting this side of the arm, and this top area here, and the top here as well. So this is what we would say is light information. Then we've got some shadow information under here, and essentially like a gradient shadow, sort of like very dark down here, and then slowly trailing off to less of into the neutral orange. So this orange in this area here, that's what we want. That's going to be sort of our flat, essentially our flatting, as you'd say in comics, or this is going to be just our neutral color. So we'll get rid of that again. I'm just going to move it off screen and actually just undo all my lines so I can look at Sydney's beautiful work without all my ugly lines all over it. And we'll go back to this guy here, who you'll remember from last tutorial. So we've got a base color here, which I just set just as a placeholder when I initially created this earlier on. So we're going to keep using that. We're going to do something though to him. I get rid of that spare layer I had there. I want to actually put it in a folder. Of course I do, because I love folders. This one's going to be called base. Essentially, that's going to be the base to the body. Maybe I'll call it body. That could be cool, right? Yeah. And we're going to put the base in there. So the base color, it needs to be, and I'm just going to color pick from Sydney's work for the sake of time. It needs to be that middle of the road orange, which I've just grabbed. And the same goes for the arms. They use the same color. So now that you can see, they're blending into the body. I do want to add some texture to it though, because it's a bit boring just to have a flat orange. And you'll get a bit of texture out of the gradient from the shadow and the highlights and stuff as well, but some surface texture would be nice. And I'm going to make it a bit brushy, I think. You can do it with like an overlay layer with an actual texture, but it's sort of might be a bit cooler for the sake of argument to use just a regular old sort of paintbrush texture. So I'm going to select a brush tool and grab, let's say, I've got a couple of different brushes here that do different things. I'm going to try a few things, see what works. Grab a slightly darker orange. Yeah, that's what I want. And you can't see it because it's not on the screen, but I'm at 100% opacity on my brush, and I'm going to turn that down slightly. Otherwise that's going to be a bit too apparent. And I'm going to turn maybe the saturation down just a touch. So I'm going to make it 77%. You can see this brush. It's going to create some nice textures for me. And then I might do some stuff with the opacity of this layer as well. I'm favoring the bottom as well because I know that the bottom's going to be darker. I'll hold down Alt and just do some eyedrop selections as well. I just want to vary the texture a bit because if it's just a flat orange, it's going to look a little bit boring. Whoa, that got a bit crazy and out of control there for a second. I don't know what was going on there. Yeah, so if you look at a lot of creatures, I've noticed, if you look at the natural world, they tend to have like a lot of texture towards the bottom of the body. Not always, but this is something I've noticed, especially in reptiles. So I tend to, when I like draw something or paint something off the top of my head, I tend to think about that. Like I like to paint a lot of monsters and things like that, so I tend to use that idea, that reptilian texture idea, as I do them. And I need to do the same for the legs as well. So yeah, I need to actually have that darker colored selected. So that back leg there is on the same, in the same mask as the body and the head and all that as well. So, and I might just make some, where's my mouse gone? Oh, what's going on? There we go. Just the computer's being a bit of a spaz. I grab this brush and create some slightly yellow tints as well. Now these aren't highlights, I just want to stipulate that as I'm going through here. I just want to vary up the surface texture a little bit, create some different tones. This is all pretty much the same value, which is the same lightness or darkness. So I'm not giving it any value information. I'm just creating texture on the surface. Or attempting to. I'm not sure how good this is going to look, but when I get some lights on there, it will look a lot better. And this is sort of the part of a painting where things are a little bit scary because you're like, what is going on? Is this going to look any good? What are you doing, Michael? That might be a bit bright. Blend that in a bit just by selecting a color near it. Alright, I think I'm just pushing around pixels at the moment. Okay. I actually need to create another window on another screen because another fun thing about Cintiqs is that the color is not great. Yeah, I can see that color is not great. I might have to fix that. It's a bit more green than I wanted it to be. Yeah, let's go with it. You could be like, hey, that looks really bad, Michael. And I will be like, hey, you're not wrong. You're not necessarily right, but you're not necessarily wrong. It sort of looks like a bit of an orange. That's fine though. And just think about the way the texture will work with the topology of him as well. So, because that's where his knee is there essentially. The texture will be stretched over his knee because it's bent. So create that texture there, and then maybe over out to where his toes go a bit as well. And I can't edit that toe there as well because that's on a different layer. So yeah, just create that sense of topology just a touch. And they're webbed feet as well, so it's sort of creating a bit of topology there, which you do generally inform with light and dark, but at this point I'm not too concerned about that. I'm just trying to get in there with some, like I said, some textures. So yep, that's looking like it looks. We will move on from the body though, and we'll do the front arms with that same brush that I used before. I'm just going to use that weird yellow, hit the shoulders and hit that and get a bit darker underneath. There's a sort of arm there in that area there. That's not looking too shabby. Turn that saturation up a touch. Yeah, that's cool. And we'll do the same on this side. Just a bit dark around that side there, and then hit some of those highlights in there as well. Yeah, and just follow the toes out to fingers, or just digits in general. So this arm here and this arm here, as you can see, are in that same masked area. So now we've got, if I just get rid of that light there, the line art, sorry. We've got some texture happening. I'm just going to fix up this area. Oops, I just need to be on the correct layer. Fix up this texture here, is going to be funny. And then also go to the arms base and fix up that as well. It's looking a bit hot through there as well. Yeah, cool. So yeah, it's got a bit of variation to the surface now. It's not amazing or 100% perfect, but it's all I really need at the moment. So I'm getting a bit carried away. I'm worried because you're watching this. It's making me feel nervous about my painting ability. So it helps if I'm on the right layer. I'm just gonna do a bit more on here, just to get some of this form happening. It's all quite subtle really, but when you start using multiply layers, all this stuff becomes a lot more obvious, and then we'll do some highlights as well, and you'll be like, yep, I can totally see all that texture. You knew exactly what he was talking about. Which I knew all along, of course, but, you know, I had to play stupid. Alright, so that's some texture. Whether it's good texture or not, I'll leave that up to you to decide. Okay, so that is fine. We'll call that texture. And this is sort of a base. I actually did that on the same layer. I can actually merge that down. It doesn't really matter if it's on the base layer. It doesn't have to be 100% flat one color. So I'm just going to select the layer above the base and hit Control E. And it just merges it down with the base layer, and it'll adopt the name of the layer underneath. So that layer there is the arm. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a multiply layer for both of these, and you can just paint directly on if you want. There's a couple of different ways of doing this. I kind of like the technique of using an overlay layer. It saves you having to think too much about the colors of your shadows, and it makes it a little bit more consistent, I've found, and just speeds up the process. So I'm going to use a blue for my overlay, for my multiply layer. I'm going to grab a brush so I can just create a quick palette. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a blue, but I want the blue to be quite desaturated. So when you're using the color picker, what you need to think about is the further to the right you go, the more saturated it is. The further to the left, the more desaturated it is, or the more sort of grey, white, or black it is. The higher up you go, obviously, the lighter the value is, and the lower you go, the darker it is. So say I want a really saturated blue and I want it to be as light as possible within that region there, then that's going to be the most light and the most saturated. And conversely, the most dark and the most saturated, but you know, black is still kind of pretty desaturated, I guess. So that is the most dark and saturated it could probably be. And the middle is the best of both worlds. So we want a sort of desaturated blue. And I think sort of around this area here. You don't want it to be, even though it's going to be a shadow, you don't want it to be actually dark. You kind of want it to be the middle, because we're using a multiply layer. It's going to multiply that by the color underneath, so it will actually end up being kind of dark, and I'll just favor it a little bit lighter, I think. So I'm going to create a layer up the top here above everything, just so I can color pick this in case I lose the color, which I have done in the past, and I want this to be that, and I also want it to be 100% opaque. There you go. So I can just quickly color pick that as necessary. You can also use the color picker or the swatches in Photoshop. I just find it easier to do it this way. That's just me. So, you know, do it whatever way works best for you. But for me, this is the way I like to do it. Okay, so we're going to create a new layer, and we're going to change that layer from a normal layer with this little drop down menu, or drop up menu as it were, make a multiply. And we're going to do this. First, we're going to do it with the fill tool, but we're actually going to use the gradient tool. And it's a gradient from opaque to completely transparent. I can't show you because it's off. The tool is off screen, unfortunately. But yeah, maybe I can drag it in. Can I drag it in? Yep, sure. Okay, so this is normally at the top of your Photoshop tools. What what you want to do is, what you want to do is select the, what have I done? Yeah, select that, and this is all these things are happening on all the wrong screens, so I'm sorry, but bear with me. You've got a couple of different options here. We're picking the one that goes from the color that is your main color to opaque, which you can tell by the little squares as the opaque, which means opaque in Photoshop. And you can also see it here. It's going from solid sort of blue-gray to completely transparent. I could change this to be not transparent with these color things here. I'm not going to get into that right now. The main important thing you need to know is that I've selected that and I've clicked OK. And then if I make a gradient fill, it will gradient from the color to the to transparent. So I'll get rid of that for now, and I'll just drag this out of the screen because I don't need it. And we are going to use, oh, actually I do need it. I just want to show you one more thing. This is a flat gradient, so it's going to create essentially, I'll try and show you best, create a horizontal line, or create basically a line, which can be good for certain things. If you're doing hard surface modeling, if you're doing hard surface painting, I do a lot of hard surface modeling as well, but I'm doing painting right now. Then that could be very useful for you, but it's not what we want. We actually want the circle guy here, which creates a central area in which it creates the gradient from, and then you can click and drag and just create sort of some fill there, and just and inform some of the volume of your character. I'll just get rid of that again because we don't need to have that in the way. And this is going to be very loose and broad. I'm going to bring the line up again because I want to be able to see it, and I'm just going to go back because it's not exactly what I want. So just making sure that we're on the correct layer. It is set to multiply. This layer has to be above your base layer or your texture layer, otherwise it's not multiplying on top of anything. So we're just going to softly drag it in, and my fill is set to 100. The fill tool is set to 100, so just in case you were wondering. At this stage you also kind of need to think about where your light's coming from. So I already know or decided what I'm going to do, but I will in fact let you in on the secret of what I'm going to do. The light, let's go back to this layer so I can make some lines and draw. The light's going to be coming from this direction here, sort of obviously from the top angle, and it's going to cast a shadow essentially from this point here out. So if you imagine the shadow would be cast sort of here from the frog, and then this side's all going to be in shadow, and underneath's going to be in shadow, and this side of thing's going to be in shadow, and that's going to be in shadow, and that's going to be in shadow, and that's going to be in shadow. So I hope those lines made a lot of sense to you just then. They made a lot of sense to me. Alright, so let's go back into this layer here. Hit G to go to your fill tool again, and we'll just start favoring the side of the dude. This is not, we're not trying to make this super accurate at the moment, but we're trying to get the bigger parts of it done. And even though we're using this sort of tool, we might end up going in and painting some of the shadows anyway, but for now, this is all we really need to do. I'm going to create a lasso selection of this mouth because there's actually some shadow going to be happening underneath the lip here, because the lip is sort of folding in on over the top of the body, as it were. This isn't exactly on model from what Sydney did. I kind of fudged it a little bit just for this particular angle and shot that I wanted, but we'll call this concept art. It's designed to inspire the production process, and mainly to inspire you to create a painting of your own. So just using the selection tool, just select that. It's loose around this area, it doesn't matter here. I just want to be able to get it so I'm filling and creating a shadow going in this direction here, but not hitting this area here because this area is going to be in light, and I just want to sort of hit just the underside of the lip. So you can see it's just sort of peeking out now. And I don't want too much as well. If you want to hide this line, so you can actually, this creepy crawly line, you can actually hide the line outline, and you can hit Control H, and it just hides hides the selection tools, and you can hit Control H again, and it'll come back. Excuse me. So this is all looking pretty good. This area here will need to be darker, obviously, and then we've got some funky lines going on over here. That's fine. We can just use the eraser tool to get rid of that. So we're going to deselect, and we're going to use a soft eraser and just blend that in a little bit there. We'll do all the particulars when we get more into the painting process, but for now, this is all it really needs to be. All right, so let's do the inside of the eye sockets now. So I'll need to be able to see those lines again. We'll probably use a selection tool again as well. So this underside here is going to be in shadow. Actually, I might not need a selection tool because this layer is underneath the eye. Probably just be able to drag out, yeah, and create sort of a spherical effect. That looks real good. Oops, bit too much. So you can see this is why we didn't want to sort of create too much volume with the texture. Yeah, that's looking nice. And we'll be able to get even more volume when we go in and do the highlights as well, and some further shading. But for now, we're just sort of, like I said, broad strokes, trying to get the majority of the shadow filled in. Now, I'm actually going to want to mask off this a bit, so sort of just this area here, where there's a plane. Try it again. Okay, so just following that plane around there, just with the eye socket. Add a bit more. It's the inside of that eye socket. And I did that because this is the area that I want to create shadow in, and I'm just going to blend that over like that. Okay, and with the selection, with the whatchamacallit, the gradient fill again. Just quickly do that. See what that looks like. Add some more shadow in that socket there. There we go. It's starting to look a bit more like it. Deselect. You couldn't see I had a selection, but there was one. I just hidden it, and I'm just going to get in there with the eraser, with the soft eraser, and just blend that in a little bit. That's not looking too bad. Actually, that's not looking ideal. Let's use the thingamabob, the gradient fill there. Yeah, that's looking more like it. So you can see it's starting to have a bit of a form. And you can tell which side the light is coming from as well. And that's not looking too bad. We might just go to the eraser tool. Eraser? Yes, eraser. And erase some of that shadow there, and some of that shadow there, just to help with that overall form. When you're painting, it doesn't hurt to just zoom out every now and then just to check everything's looking okay, because if you're in this far, everything could be going out of control in other areas, and you might not be noticing it. Actually, just before we do anything else, we'll select the nostril. And I want to make it a pretty wide selection because I just want to, the fill tool, just want to create, oops. Actually, I want to make the selection a bit more specific than that. So I'll delete this part here. There we go, that's a bit better. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's going to look good. And we'll do the same on this side. And just with the fill tool again, because the nostril is going to have some shadow. Yeah, cool, just a little bit of detail, not too much. Do a little bit of the same here, just where he sort of got a bit of a smile. I've caricaturized this quite a bit. This is not the most realistic tree frog ever, but oops. For some reason the type of fill had changed to some crazy other one that I didn't want. That's the kind of one that I do want. And I'm just going to hide that selection while I work there. Actually, that looks like pretty much how I want it. Yep. So I'll reveal that again with Control H, and then I'll hit Control D and deselect that. And I'll hit soften that edge there with the eraser. That's pretty much what I want. Yeah, cool. We're going to get in there and make it a bit darker in some of these areas as well, but not with the multiply layer, just with a regular old painting layer. So yeah, so that's cool. The body is pretty much where I want it to be. I might go in and do some extra work without the recording going, or I'll just do the whole lot and just speed it up. All right, so let's do these legs. So we're just going to go to into the front arms folder, the arms, the legs. I don't know what a frog has. Does it have arms? Does it have legs? Who knows? I'm not some sort of science guy. I'm not David Attenborough. Let's change that to multiply with that new layer above the base layer. Hit G, make sure that we've got the correct color selected, which is going to be this one here that we created with the little palette. And we're just going to go in there again. Oops. From a bit further away. Just clicking and dragging. Obviously, when you do this, the closer you go, the more, the smaller it's going to be, and then the further it's going to be when you do that. And I just want it pretty soft. So I'm just sort of feathering it in. Yeah, that's not bad. And this is going to be specific to the painting that you're doing as well, but fundamentally, it's going to be very similar. So that one's pretty good. I'll do a bit of a broad stroke there. Yeah, that's good. And this one's pretty much going to be all in shadow. We'll create some darker shadows there. And then I'll just sort of have some sympathetic light happening, some bounce light happening there. We'll see that further on when we get to that point as well. Just going back to the body. We'll just call these layers shadow as well. And arms, so I know which one I'm working on just at a glance. And this one will be body shadow. Cool. And the body shadow, we want to, because the body shadow actually is informing this leg here, so I'm actually going to just erase just so I can see that form a bit more. And then use the lasso tool just underneath the leg there, just so I can, and I'm going to hide it so I can work properly. Yeah, just so you can see the sort of the back as the leg sort of goes up and meets the knee, which is not quite in focus. The frogs have weird legs. They've got like two knees or a weird shouldery, sockety joint. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a scientist. I'm not David Attenborough. Is he a scientist? I don't know. Whatever. He knows more about animals than me. So yeah, that's pretty much all the multiply layer done and the texture done. We'll hit some more shadows when we actually get into painting. Blend this leg in a bit more nicer because obviously it looks like some sort of weird Monty Python-esque sort of weird arm thing, and that's not very good. And so we'll make it so it actually blends in a bit better there. We may have to merge it down at some stage. That's fine as well. Basically, we just want it to look good at the end of the day, and at the end of this day, it's looking like this. I don't know if this looks good to you or not. It does look a little bit crazy early on, and that comes with the territory of painting. It never looks good until it's finished, hopefully. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about doing some multiply layers for shading at this stage. Next lesson, we'll do some highlights, and we'll start thinking more about where the light's coming from and what would be happening with the environment. We're going to have to start putting some environment in because the environment really affects what sort of what happens with the shadow and what happens with the light bouncing off and around, and we can start thinking about bounce light, which will really start to make the character pop in the end. So, but for now, this is pretty much all we need it to be looking like. It sort of just looks a little bit cut out and weird, but essentially that's exactly what we want it to be. So I hope you've enjoyed this, or I hope it's been informative at least. If you enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, show someone you love, subscribe, click that little like button. Like really, just click it. It's super easy. It will take you. You could have just clicked it now. You click it now. It'll be great if you did. More people see these, and it will really help us out. Yeah, and hopefully help some other people out. Help some people finding these. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you again in the next tutorial.